Yes, I have the information that we have the representative of the Commission with us, and now I will give the floor to Fabienne. Fabienne Keller, the Vice President of the EPP, of the Intergroup Urban. You know, I'm all the time in my official position. Fabienne Keller from the Renew Group. Yes, please.
Thank you, Jan. I will say a few words opening the session. Meantime, hello to all of you. I see Yunus, who arrived. I could see him on the screen, the president of the Regi committee, and all the colleagues and former colleagues and people from the associations. Thank you to be there. I'm very happy to open this debate on the urban dimension of the EU cohesion policy for 21-27. This is not the first one, but we are making great steps. And so I would thank Jan for organizing this very regular and very interesting exchanges on urban policy. And may I quote Kazia, who is organizing this as the right and left arm of Jan. As you know, for the next EU budget for 21-27, the Commission has proposed to update the EU cohesion policy with the new set of rules. This is the Common Provisions Regulation you were just talking about, Jan, that establishes common provisions for 7 funds and the shared management, including the European Regional Fund. This was, of course, the subject of important and difficult negotiations with the Parliament, and the European Parliament played a central role. So I would like to congratulate all the Parliament negotiators, and among them, Jan, you played, of course, a central role in your function of co-rapporteur of MFF. The result was to allocate at least 8% of the RDF resources at national level to sustainable urban development. And concerning the subject you just discussed, yes, Jan, the discussion with the local and regional authorities, may I say that in France, the discussion is quite developed for a long time. And so I think it's not possible to put in place this plan without a long, good and positive discussion respecting each level of governance. This is a sign that urban policy is progressing at European level. We want to give ourselves the means to support our cities for the many challenges they have to face. So I am very pleased to open this seminar. Thank you to all of you, and I give the floor again to Jan to open the meeting. I wish everybody a fruitful debate.
Yes, thank you, Fabienne. Merci. And before giving the floor to representative of the Commission, I must say that for us, for many, many years, we were fighting to have a very clear definition of the urban dimension in the cohesion policy, not only in cohesion policy. It's urban dimension is a kind of horizontal approach to all the policies of EU. Today we are speaking about the urban dimension inside in the cohesion policy, and of course we have so many discussions inside the Regi committee. It's not about money for cities, because immediately the people, our colleagues, are protesting. So okay, what about the small cities? What about the rural areas, etc.? We are discussing about the different dimensions of cohesion policy. This is one of this dimension. I mean, the urban dimension. Okay, it's like the horizontal in the old cohesion policy. How we treat it, is it just the declaration, or is it just real action, a real action? So I think this is our question to the European Commission. What about the proposal of the real action concerning the urban dimension in the next years, 21-27? So let's start, and I would like to give the floor to Maureen Gillen, the head of the unit for policy development and economic analysis and DG regional and urban policy. And to the colleagues who are new, I must tell you this story, because it's something which makes the Commission always furious when I ask the question. I don't want to provoke Moray Gilland now, but when I see the title, Regional and Urban Policy, is it about two places? I mean, regional policy and urban policy, or is it regional and urban policy as one? The title is diplomatically completely unclear, which gives the different possibilities for everybody. And I think that's why the Commission probably proposed it. For me, they are different, in fact, policies. I mean, regional policy, the whole is a cohesion, but there's a different approach to regions and a different approach to urban, I think. This is my impression. So, Moray Gilland, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. I'll try not to get furious in trying to respond on the question, but I think it's an interesting question because, of course, the Directorate General was known as DG Regional Policy for many, many years, and the urban element was added some 10 years ago now, approximately. I think there are a number of ways to look at it. I think the straightforward answer I will give is that it was considered a question of visibility. I think you're absolutely correct that you can look at the question from, is this a single policy? Is it two parts of the same policy? Is there a distinct urban policy? I think those are all very much worth discussing, but I think at least the change was about visibility and was about seeing the word urban at the Commission's organizational level, in the same way as you have, for example, agricultural and rural development as one of the titles. So I think there's a little bit of that behind it. And in fact, what I want to do just briefly this morning is very much follow on from what Jan had said. In fact, it could almost have been my opening 2 or 3 remarks, was to underline that this is about the urban dimension of cohesion policy that we're talking about, and it is not purely about how much money goes here and how much money goes there. There are much more fundamental questions about how this is organized, how it is structured, and I think Ms. Keller referred to that as well when she was talking about the ongoing discussions in France, for example, how the support for urban areas is put together and delivered. So if we have a look at the next screen, you can see that we've picked up 3 or 4 key areas where you see the urban dimension present in the cohesion policy legal framework. At the common provisions regulation level, you have urban visibly included as part of the policy objectives. Very strong references in the partnership dimension, and then something I'll touch on in a little more detail in a minute, some of the tools and the requirements surrounding the integrated territorial development approach, which is critical for delivering the urban dimension effectively. Within the ERDF Cohesion Fund regulation, you have a number of specific objectives inside the policy objectives that highlight the urban dimension in particular. You have the fundamental article on sustainable urban development. You also have the new European Urban Initiative, which has a dedicated article, and I've got a slide there as well, just to give some background on that. You also have, interestingly, an explicit mention in the ESF Plus regulation about the importance of the social fund dimension as part of the territorial and local development strategies, and a multi-fund approach in that context. So I think that's not to be ignored. And then under Interreg, on the cooperation side, of cohesion policy. You obviously have the possibility for integrated territorial development, and for some borders, that can be extremely important from the urban dimension point of view. If you consider the Austria-Slovakia border and the Vienna-Bratislava cooperation as just one example, how important that becomes in a cross-border context. And we also have the continuation of the current Olbrycht program on encouraging cooperation and exchanges of best practice amongst cities. So that gives you a very quick overview, if you like, of where you see visibly the urban element through the legal framework. So if we move on, excuse me, then looking at the policy objective and specific objective elements that I mentioned. You have the 5 headline policy objectives about trying to make Europe smarter, greener, more connected, more social, and closer to the citizens. And you can see in red that we've highlighted at the specific objective level where you see the strong urban dimension present. So in a couple of places in the context of making Europe greener, noticeably the protection and preservation of nature, green infrastructure, including in urban areas. And then one specific objective, which I think will continue to grow in importance through the next programming period, sustainable urban mobility there. And then inside this new policy objective, the Europe closer to the citizens, the principle of supporting sustainable and integrated development of all territories, and we have a specific objective targeted at urban areas, as you can see, but looking at it from this holistic approach, trying to address all the relevant issues. Then on the next slide, just a couple of quick words about that new policy objective. What we've had in the current period in 2014-2020 is we've had more of what I would call a thematic sectoral approach to the program structure and the delivery of cohesion policy. So you had a number of areas of support that you were providing. And one of the challenges that I think programs, regions, and cities have faced is how you take that more thematic approach and make it cross-sectoral. And there have been a number of initiatives to try and take this forward. Some of it has worked, but the feedback that had been received was that it was quite a challenge to construct inside the system. So essentially policy objective 5 is an answer to this, because it is one of the 5 vertical policy objectives, yes, but as you can see from the content is much more horizontal. So it provides that possibility of cross-sectoral support designed from the bottom up. In the urban context, you can see that this is one of the key areas about not just focusing on the urban areas themselves, but about that wider dimension, the functional urban areas, looking at the wider context, and in particular, how that peri-urban and those rural areas close to the cities all interact in order to take full account of the urban dimension. So on the next slide, I want to just to touch relatively briefly on partnership and multi-level governance. This obviously a critical issue for the European Parliament, and the partnership article in the Common Provisions Regulation has been significantly strengthened due to the tough negotiating skills, I would say, of your co-rapporteurs and shadow rapporteurs in particular. And this underlines the need for urban authorities to be involved in the overall partnership. But more explicitly, perhaps, in the regulation wording than we've seen before, there is a need for the involvement of partners from start to finish, if I can call it that. So it's not purely an implementation question. It's about the preparation of program partnerships, preparation of programs, their implementation, and also their assessment afterwards, the evaluation at program level. So all of this becomes as I say, a from start to finish approach on partnership. And an important point that again added explicitly at the demand of the European Parliament, this last bullet point about the possibility for member states to allocate appropriate percentages for the capacity building of social partners and civil society organizations. Again, something likely to be of particular interest for urban development issues. It leaves a degree of room for maneuver. Of course, it talks about an appropriate percentage. What is an appropriate percentage? That will vary perhaps from member state to member state. But what it provides is a hook in the regulations precisely to have this discussion, to talk about how are your social partners and civil society organizations doing, how involved are they as part of the partnership, how involved are they as part of the program delivery, and if they are not sufficiently involved, then you should be looking to make use of this, and this would be the approach that the Commission would take in its discussions with the member states. Then on the next slide, we have the framework that the regulation provides on integrated territorial development. And this goes to the core of what Mr. Olbrycht was underlining right at the beginning about the dimension, the systems in place for support for integrated territorial approach more generally, and obviously for today's discussion in the context of urban areas. So it's about linking in to the territorial and local strategies that already exist, having a specifically defined area, taking account of the necessary developmental and needs and the potentials. The locally coordinated interventions, and this is, if you like, that extension of the partnership dimension to the local level, not just on the whole organization, not just on the preparation, but as you can see from the penultimate bullet point, at project selection level as well. So it's this cascading down, if you like, of the whole principle of partnership to this integrated territorial approach. What we have done, as you will see on the next slide, and which was welcomed by the co-legislators during the discussions, was to maintain a flexible approach in relation to integrated territorial and local development as far as the forms of that development are concerned. What we didn't want to do was to be overly rigid in saying that territories had to follow particular approaches. Now, why did we do that? Well, it's because there is quite a diversity of approach and organization across the Union. We already have quite long experience, notably in the rural areas, with the community-led local development approach, the leader approach. We have seen, although it's been challenging to start up in a number of places, but we have seen rather successful use of the integrated territorial investment tool that was created back at the beginning of the 2014-2020 period. And I think we have some very interesting and positive results from the ITI approach in Poland and Czechia, just to take two examples. But we also have a range of other tools that have been developed at national level that perhaps don't comply word for word with a CLLD or an ITI approach, but which are equally valid. So this is why at the form level, we wanted to retain that flexibility and say, whichever form you have, you can continue to use so that you're not ripping things up and starting again, provided you meet the minimum criteria for what is considered integrated territorial development. And those are the points that we've just covered on the previous slide. Then, if I turn to the sustainable urban development dimension, here, this is the specific element within the ERDF Cohesion Fund regulation that targets and focuses on the urban areas. And it does this through the minimum percentage route, which you can see at the bottom of the slide, and which again, I would underline is very much achieved through tough negotiation from the European Parliament. That figure, that 8%, is 60% higher than the 2014-2020 minimum level. What we expect to see here is a significant use of policy objective 5, that closer to the citizens objective targeting the urban areas. But it's important to underline that it's still possible to use all of the other policy objectives and all of the other content of those policy objectives to focus in on urban areas. So this does provide quite a wide flexibility. Again, that kind of trying to encourage that cross-sectoral approach to take forward. One word perhaps on the minimum percentages there. It can be a controversial issue, the ring fencing of support. One of the risks attached to it is if so much gets ring fenced, so many different types of areas get ring fenced, that you end up constraining delivery because there is so much predefined. And the outcome of the regulatory discussion, as I assume all of you know, is that effectively this is the only ring fencing existing at the cohesion policy level. So I think it does underline the importance, the political importance, that recognition in relation to sustainable urban development, that this is the policy area, the theme that has that percentage minimum attached to it. Then, if you permit, just a couple of last slides on some of the support elements that are included within the regulatory package. And to start, I wanted to underline the European Urban Initiative. One of the elements that you see if you look at the 2014 to 2020 cohesion policy regulations is that there is actually a lot of possible support for urban areas, but that it is relatively scattered and fragmented across the regulations. So you have support for the urban innovative actions, which has been one of the most popular parts of the current regulatory package. You have the possibility of technical assistance support provided on an individual basis to urban areas through the technical assistance inside the regulations. You have the Urban Development Network, which has organized a series of meetings and support activities hosted by the Commission in providing that support. But all of it, we felt, was a little fragmented and disconnected. And the idea really with the European Urban Initiative is to bring all that under one umbrella. Now, it can still provide support in different areas. You can see on the right-hand side here on the strands of activity, there's still the possibility of support for innovative actions, support for capacity building, increasing the use of territorial impact assessments. So all of these different elements can still be supported, but our idea was to place this under a single umbrella and to provide a greater degree of coordination about that visible and not insignificant, I have to say, urban support at 400 million euros, which was the final outcome of the discussions. Complementing the urban initiative on the next slide is the Olbrycht programme. Now, in the Commission's original proposal, we had also suggested bringing the Olbrycht programme, which is actually formally a programme under Interreg, a partnership of all the member states working together on this area. We had suggested bringing it under the umbrella of the Urban Initiative as well, and providing all of that support under one umbrella. The co-legislators highlighted the popularity and success of the Olbrycht program and felt that it made more sense for it to continue into the new period in the same format as it is now. And that was the outcome of the regulatory discussions. So it will continue identifying good practice, exchanging good practice, discussing innovative approaches, providing those the urban-rural linkages again, one of the focus points for the Olbrycht program. One of the challenges or one of the extra elements then we will have to look at is the coordination between the urban initiative and Olbrycht. That's an extra level that we have to take into account in order to ensure, as the third bullet point says, that they complement each other and we don't create unnecessary overlaps there. So that concludes my overview of what we have at the regulatory level. As you can see, that there's quite a lot of significant content there. It's, as I stressed earlier on, it's very much about providing the framework. Now the key issue is how this translates down at member state level, how it translates down to the urban level and the involvement. That's something that obviously is one of the priorities for the Commission as part of the negotiation phase on programmes, which we are have already been moving into on an informal basis, and that now steps up with the finalisation of the regulations. But I hope that gives you a helpful framework for your discussion this morning. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. I think in your presentation there were some elements which are very interesting for the next part of our debate. Like, for example, that the only ring fencing we have in the cohesion policy is just this famous 8%. By the way, we won the battle with the Commission because Commission wanted to have 6, and the Parliament also wanted 10. So we finished with 8. Of course, 8 is better than 6, but not as like 10. But I think that the question is that the only ring fencing, this is very important remark. And that's why I think we have to go back to this. And the other element is how, and so this is my question also to our next speakers, how we can guarantee through the regulations that the partnership with local and regional authorities will be reality of the government. The Commission wanted to do it. And I have the question to 3 persons who are not the observers, but they were very active in creating or co-creating the new regulations. So we will have the 3 rapporteurs now, and I would like them to comment what they had from the Commission, giving us the view about the negotiation process. What are the arguments you were putting during this debate on the urban dimension in the regulation? What has been achieved and what we lost? I mean, what we couldn't achieve in this kind of debate. So first, we will have the 2 co-rapporteurs of the CPR, but also REACT-EU. By the way, nobody is discussing REACT-EU today. Everybody is discussing national development plans, not REACT-EU. So 2 co-rapporteurs of the CPR and 1 shadow rapporteur for ERDF. Let's start then, and we will have 3 presentations, and next we will have the questions and answers. First, Andrei Novakov, the EPP co-rapporteur of the Common Provision Regulation and REACT-EU. Andrei, the floor is yours.
Hi, Jan. Thank you very much for having me here, and I appreciate your invitation. It is a pleasure to join that fruitful discussion. I was happy to listen and to see Maury this morning, to follow your presentation. And I do apologize that you catch me on my moving in office because we are campaigning here in Bulgaria. But, you know, I'm more than happy to dedicate those 2 hours listening and joining you. And I would like to say, to share a few stories. And the first one, Jan, it's about one working breakfast that we've got with you end of 2014 in the parliament in Brussels. And I thought to myself, what a wise man, not because of his gray hair, but because of the words of wisdom that you share with me. Back then, we discussed the beginning of the programming period 2014-2020. This is what we discussed. And now we are at the end of the programming period discussing how it went. And that's a very important lesson that I've learned. And I'm happy that I've learned along with you. I mean, as someone who did so much in the name of the cohesion and preserving the cohesion policy, because now we are discussing the benefits. But a few years ago, it wasn't sure that the cohesion policy will be with us for this programming period, because I was listening in the plenary, colleagues who were saying that the cohesion policy is something from the past. It's like just a subsidiary for poor regions. Is nothing like this. And I love to give an examples, especially in Bulgaria, where we benefit 85% co-financement, for example, for high-speed trains that we are building a line, a railway line across the country. So for some MEPs from West Europe or Central Europe, this is a pure subsidy for Bulgarian economy. But when you look deeper, you will see that the trains that are moving on the top of those railways are German Siemens. When you see what kind of buses we are buying, they could be Czech Skoda. When with European funding, we are rebuilding hospitals. When you get inside the hospital, you will see that the equipment is Dutch Philips. So huge part of those projects actually are going, you know, backward and forward across the countries. We have another example. It's a new bridge which goes across Danube River. It's the first bridge that we've built between Bulgaria and Romania for half a century. Only this taken is significant enough to invest in that project. But when the critics of the cohesion policy are, you know, exploiting this for political purposes, they will say this is a project only between Bulgaria and Romania, between Vidin and Calafat, and this is only to benefit from those two countries, those two regions. But when you go on that bridge, you will see that there is German trucks full with Spanish goods going to Greek customers, and probably the driver is somewhere from, I don't know, it could be Romania or Bulgaria or whatever across, it could be from Portugal. So there is a chain of beneficiaries of that project. It's not only in our two countries. And I start sharing a story, and the CPR already is part of the history, and I'm happy about it, because we promised that we'd deliver on time, and we did it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something that comes for a given. So we dedicated a lot of efforts, and I'm happy that we managed, and it will be on disposal of the member states, I think next month, which is an achievement. And at least if there is any delayment of the programming period, it won't be because of the CPR. So since I started sharing the stories, I would like to give you some more, of course, from the country that I know best and I'm campaigning in at the moment. So first is the poorest region in Europe. The city is called Wraca, and for the last 4 years, actually, the economy is booming. The economy is booming mainly because of EU funds. And the mayor very wisely actually used EU funds to invest in crucial infrastructure, which will bring investors. First, it rebuilt very crucial roads. It invested in industrial zone, and actually for for about 4 years, actually bring more than 1,500 new jobs. It invested in research and in schools and kindergartens, and that bring very much added value to the economy of the city. Other cities, for example, is Gabrovo. Gabrovo is a champion in Bulgaria when it comes to EU funds compared to its size. So it invested in recreation areas, it invested in water supply system for about 35 million. So actually a very basic needs that actually keep the people on their hometown, to stop the shrinking of the city, to stop actually the depopulating that area. It's because of the EU funds. We have other examples. For example, in Petric, this is a very small city between 3 borders from North Macedonia, Greece, and Bulgaria, where they invested in very much social services. And that's one of the municipalities that actually is naturally increased because of EU funds. So there is more babies born and growth at that town because the new kindergartens are built and the schools are renovated. So the education is a very good level, which keeps the families there. So it's so much more about just submitting of projects, monitoring and control. It's about changing for real the life of on a daily basis of those people. And I will always remember, before EU funds, it was about 2007, from our capital to the sea coast, we've been traveling at least for 1 day. So we have to wake up 4 in the morning, because there was queue and traffic jams because of the very small roads to the sea coast from Sofia. And it took more than 7 to 8 hours. So 1 day to go to the sea. Now with the highway built, you can do it for 3 hours, even less, but that's not the main reason. Few years after the highway was built, the factories actually grow side by side from the side by side to the highway. The businesses are attracted by the good connectivity. And at the end of the stories that I've shared, I would like to share a bonus story, which is for it's about the new internet system, online system that the Bulgarian government developed. So you can follow those good stories live on internet. You can see how many projects are submitted, who are approved. You can monitor along the managing authorities. You can see how the beneficiary is implementing the project. So everything is transparent and is online and it's public. So this is how I think we should protect the cohesion policy. Showing the good examples and showing the mistakes as well, and making our best to avoid such mistakes again. So thank you very much, Jan, for inviting me, and I'm proud working with you. We are happy that we have in our EP cohesion team someone like you doing such a job. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Andre. Be careful with driving, because we cannot have the concentration. And now I would like to give the floor to Constance. And before I give the floor to Constance, I will tell you the story, because we were working together for many years with Constance, and I know what she knows about the cohesion policy, all the details. But from time to time, we have some quite difficult discussion, because each time when I was fighting for urban, Constance always told me, be careful, because they're not only cities in Europe, they are also the other territories. So she was always fighting for the kind of balance. So and not to shift. My answer was, if rural areas can have its own policy, Why urban areas cannot have its own policy, like European urban policy? So I think it was some kind of very constructive debate we had. But now, Constance, you are after or at the end of negotiations of CPR with some changes inside and some, as we said, the ring fencing. And it's also what Andrei said, is that the cohesion policy is from one side reducing disparities, but from the other side is to make the territories be developed. I mean, the integrated development territory is one of the main goals of the cohesion policy. Is now we will not have reducing disparities without integrated approach. Okay, so what about the negotiations? How you see the urban dimension in the negotiations of CPR and REACT-EU? Constance Krell, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jan, and thank you for the invitation. Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure for me to join the intergroup. I remember quite well the discussion starting in the preparation of the last period, 2014 to 2020, to develop the urban dimension in the cohesion policy. It costs every time a lot of power and energy to increase and to strengthen the urban dimension in the cohesion policy. Because as you said already, Jan, that if we start with urban policy, then of course the rural areas or the mountainous areas, or I don't know, the islands, you have a lot of regions and territories which who want to have as well a very special part of the cohesion policy. But I think to support cities, to support the urban dimension in the cohesion policy is something essential for the whole cohesion policy in the European Union. And because I think cities are very often the engine of a regional development and not only a development in one city. So we have, looking back, you were there, the rapporteur for the ERDF, Lambert and me for the CPR, and now Christoph Hetman was this time responsible a lot for the regional fund, and Andre and me for the CPR again. I think we developed the urban dimension of the cohesion policy. That is the good message. But looking back, coming with the new instruments which More already raised, the integrated territorial investment and the community-led local development, the question is every time the co-legislator give some opportunities for urban aspects in the cohesion policy, but the bigger problem is to introduce this in the reality of the cities and especially in the member states, in the Länder, in the regions. When I'm looking to Germany, to my home country, we have only, what I know, we have only one ITI in Schleswig-Holstein, which was successful, and one successful project with CLLD. It was in Sachsen-Anhalt. I know the discussions in my own land in Saxony, that it was very difficult, not for the cities, they were ready to do this, but for the negotiation with the regional government and the cities to get this, and it was often not possible. And this will be the situation probably for the new period as well. Anyway, in Germany, they used at least 1.5 billion euros for sustainable urban development in the last period. This means that about 13% from the ERDF is used for this possibility. That's not bad. I hope that will be better in the future period. We increase the amount, you said this already, Jan, from 5 to 8%. And of course, this is not all. You can use with other parts of the cohesion policy, of course, as well in the cities and for the urban dimension. But for sustainable urban development, in minimum the member states have to give 8% of the whole amount. Maury said already a lot of the instruments. I want to raise your interest maybe of one special possibility with the community-led local development. I found this approach very interesting because this is including on a local level the inhabitants of the cities to participate in the projects, participate in the development of the city. This creates a much bigger acceptance of new projects and on the other side as well, a much better communication to the public that the European Union is supporting urban development. And as I know, everybody knows this because this approach is working on the rural areas already for a long time. In the beginning, it was a little bit difficult because it was a new method and so on. But now on the rural areas, it's working very well and everybody is happy. Why not in the cities? Yes, you have to start to organize networks between inhabitants, between associations and the local authorities. It's a new approach, but a new approach is not a bad approach. And as I know, a lot of cities, for example, are in territories which are in so-called better developed regions. That means in the next period, you will have a co-financing rate by the cohesion funds by 40%. That is not so much from my point of view. Unfortunately, the member states were not ready to increase this to more percentages. But, and here is a really interesting possibility, if the cities are using the CLLD approach, you can get 10% more. And this makes it interesting, hopefully interesting, more interesting for cities going the way via the CLLD approach. And I hope that we have in the next period a much better approach to this idea as well to the ITIs, because these are really, from my point of view, modern possibilities to introduce in a modern cohesion policy. And as Andre already said, this was sometimes not easy. I remember that we tried to have the Rural Development Fund as well under the umbrella of the CPR. In the parliament, we had there a big majority. In the commission, it was completely divided. In the member state, there was no interest. From my point of view, we would need such an integrated approach between rural development on the one side, and rural development is not only supporting agriculture, it's much more, and the rest of the cohesion policy. And to say, Jan, you are created the word urban, I remember. The connection between the rural areas and the urban areas. This is important for us. And in these difficult times, we should not forget this. And unfortunately, we lost this Rural Development Fund in the CPR. We don't have this, this approach, and I don't know what will be the outcome of the negotiation in the agriculture policy if there is an approach in this direction. But we should not forget that we can't do only a specific urban policy. We can't do a specific rural policy. We have to integrate this, and hopefully this better or strengthened partnership principle in the CPR will be helpful as well to connect all these different kinds of policy we have as well, the fishery funds there and so on. And I think this approach could be then the only successful for the cohesion policy. So I think and I hope that we will have a much more development in the future cohesion policy. And but the point is really, Jan, you said this, we have to transfer this into the reality. And I hope that the Commission will be very strong. We have a lot less bureaucracy than in the past. The partnership agreements will be shorter, will be more compact. The operational programs are shorter and more compact. I hope that this gives more room for better partnership between local authorities and regional authorities and member state authorities. And I hope that this will give as well the Commission the possibility to check if there is an approach to partnership, a better approach to the partnership, if there is a better use of the ITIs and the CLLD, and that they really negotiate with the member states if this is not the case. I hope that what we can shorten in the process of negotiation with the member state and the Commission on the one side will be a better negotiation on the contents of the partnership agreements, and that really the regions can use the possibility to give the responsibility for development of a city to a city. I know that the cities are ready to do this. That's why we increased as well the technical assistance for cities and for local authorities. And I can only hope that this appropriate amount of money is then part of the negotiation, that it really will be used. But with the word appropriate, you see also that the member states are a little bit not so ready to do this. There we need really the Commission that they insist that an appropriate amount of money is not zero. I think I want to come to the end for this moment. If you have questions, of course, I try to give you answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Constance. And I think you touched this very sensitive points. I'm glad that there are several colleagues from the Regi committee, including the president, because from our side, you remember very often say, okay, why don't you make the partnerships, reinforcing of the partnership obligatory? Obligatory. I mean, this is during the negotiation with the partnership agreement. It should be obligatory for the government, not the. It's better to do it than not to do it. I mean, this is like, and the second element is about rural development. Rural development, it was a different history. Once it was in the cohesion, once it was in a CEP, but we know very well that for the agriculture, this is always the reservoir to modulate money to the first pillar. If they need money for the first pillar, they take it from the rural and they put it to the direct payments. So, but when it's together with the cohesion, they cannot do it because it should be complementary inside the cohesion policy. So I think they are the points which are really, really very important. By the way, before giving the floor to the third speaker, I would like to welcome my former colleagues from the Parliament and the Cristina Gutierrez-Cortines, and who is now speaking by the phone, so she doesn't know that I am welcoming her, and Lambert van Nistelrooy, who is with us. Lambert, very nice to meet you again. And now, what about the ERDF? ERDF, this is the this is in the ERDF. There are several elements of the urban dimension. I would like to ask the shadow rapporteur, Krzysztof Hetman. Krzysztof, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jan. Good morning, everyone, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Jan for inviting me to participate in this meeting. I'm glad to have the opportunity to speak on this intergroup and to discuss the issues of European urban policy with practitioners and people actually implementing this policy on the ground. I would also like to thank Murray for presenting what we have managed to achieve in the new ERDF regulation as it comes to the urban policy during our 2-year-long negotiations. May I, it's not to repeat what really has been said, especially that I couldn't do it any better than Murray. But I would like to pinpoint some of the aspects and maybe let you leave this meeting with some food for thought. As it refers the new ERDF and the urban policy, I think that one of the aspects of which the European Parliament is especially proud of is the fact that at least 8% of the ERDF resources at national level under the investments for jobs and growth goal shall be allocated to sustainable urban development. Just to recall that the original proposal of the Commission and the Council was 6%. The Parliament has started the negotiations with 10%, and I believe that the outcome of 8% will give you a very important and powerful tool. Now, the vital question is, how can we actually efficiently spend it? Even when we have started this ERDF negotiations, we were still in a different reality. We were trying to shape the future cohesion policy also for the cities with the same everlasting challenges in our heads. The pollution, safety, social infrastructure, etc. However, the last 11 months has changed the world completely, and I dare say that we will never return the previous business as usual. And I don't want to be over pessimistic or gloom. This change does not have to be negative, but I want to underline is that a different approach will most probably be in the table, as pandemic has brought to the cities many new challenges on top for existing ones. Until now, we are believed that the urban areas will grow continuously, but the current pandemic has shown a reserved trend. People actually started to escape from the cities. Probably everyone remembers photos from Spain, for example, from Spain and France, when people left big cities. I see it on my city, Lublin, when during the pandemic, the building plots outside the city has started to sell out in an extraordinary pace, and the prices have soared. They look for more space, own garden, recreational areas in the immediate proximity. A shift to teleworking is one of the factors that will have a significant influence on the change in the approach towards the cities. This mode of work will stay with us also after the pandemic, creating an opportunity for workers to leave the cities and move whenever they want to, and bringing the significant savings to the companies. But it will also leave many of cities' business districts empty. And with that will follow the decline in other sectors, such as restaurants, hotels for business trips, etc. All this together brings us to the conclusion that in the upcoming years, the cities might face completely different challenges than we had in the previous financial perspective. This is why we have to plan already now how the cities will look like in 10 or 20 years' time. What will be its role in a rapidly digitalizing world? Will they still be the center of trade or culture hubs? I believe that the change of paradigm is vital. We have to think of how to create new opportunities for the cities so that the citizens will still be willing to live there or visit. At the same time, we cannot start the investments where there will be no one to use them in the future, but which will only create the costs for maintaining them. This might be a very delicate balance. And finally, the most important aspect. This pandemic has shown us that if we are not prepared, we are the most vulnerable. And we absolutely cannot assume that with the end of this pandemic, we could relive, forget of what has happened and never come back to these difficult days. Scientists agree that the future pandemics are ahead of us, and I strongly believe that the role of the modern cohesion policy is to prepare us for them. Let's take the lessons from current crisis and let's use the new cohesion policy to create not only attractive, but first and foremost resilient cities. Cities for sure much more digital, with possible more space and ready to embrace new challenges. There is not only simple answer how to do all this, but I hope we can start this discussion today and hopefully continue it on future urban intergroup meetings. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to apologize everyone because I will not able to stay with you until the end because my parents will be vaccinated today, and as a good son, I have to help them get to the vaccination center. Thank you very much.
Yes, they are. Yes, good luck, and I hope that everything will be okay. And I think the people who has the chance to be vaccinated because of the age, and the others are waiting, and we will see what will happen. But anyway, I must say, Krzysztof, that you touched the very, very important problem. By the way, I don't want to provoke you, but when you say the people are leaving the cities, going to surroundings, they are still staying in the urban areas, because they are not living to the big distance. They want to be close to the cities, but they don't want to be in the cities. So they want to have the space, etc. Do you agree with this assumption? So I think that's why for us is very serious to speak about the urban areas, because this is the situation. The urbanism is now like this. I don't know, Krzysztof, do you agree before leaving?
Yes, exactly. I agree. I think that people during the last pandemic shows new space, more space, and we can see that now people live cities and find a new place outside.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you much for being with us. And now the questions and the debates is, of course, the questions can be asked to all the free speakers. I mean, the representative of the Commission and the co-rapporteurs of the CPR. I don't know if Andrei Nikara is with that, and I start immediately with the questions. I think there are several questions to Constance. Constance, you are with us.
Yes, I'm
yes,
here.
But when you look at it, during your presentation, there was the question, could you give examples on how to introduce the approach? I mean, it was about CLLR and about the Lambert, who is the experience with the CPR preparations. They asked the question about the elements of urban in the partnership agreements, and about NUTS 3. If the NUTS 3 is safeguarded in the CPR. So I think that this is about the questions to you. And can you just react to these questions?
I try to do this. With the NUTS 3, I have to ask More, because I think we are more or less on the level of NUTS 2. NUTS 3 is too small to have this from a European level. But the member states are free to act, of course, as well on the NUTS 3 level, and they will do this, of course. But for the European frame, it's NUTS 2. The NUTS 2 region is responsible territory. For the CLD, yeah, this takes another 10 minutes to explain this in a better way. Maybe, Jan, you could organize later an intergroup on this special point and invite some with experience from the practice to explain. What I can say is that a city or an urban area needs an idea where they want to develop something in their territory. Then they have to start to speak with local action groups. Or you even create local action groups. These could be everybody who is interested in to participate in this development project. But you need, of course, as well the enterprises there, the local authorities, the associations involved in the development in the city or is interested in the city. That could be environmental organizations, it could be the trade unions as well. This could be the association of the entrepreneurs. This you have to organize, and then you have to develop altogether a strategy for this special territory you want to develop. This is, I think, the main principle. We have to take care that this principle is in every partnership agreement raised, that this exists in the member, this possibility exists in the member state. That's why the position of the Commission is very helpful, that they take care about this possibility in the partnership agreement. And I can only say in every member state, in the rural areas, it already works. You know this as leader projects. You can ask your colleagues from this from these territories how they started. Maybe this is a good idea to go to the next county and to ask them how they organize this. But I know that in some cities they are already with the integrated sustainable urban development, that there are already local action groups are existing. That is possible. That is every time very helpful, because you can't give money to everybody and for everything. You have to choose something. You need a strategy, and if you develop such a strategy together with the people living in this area, then you can be quite sure that they accept then this approach. And even if not every enterprise and not every hotel or restaurant is directly supported by the funds, it is an approach which you developed together. And on this basis, you can be much more successful for the whole project than without this approach. Maybe this is to give an idea on this CLLD, and I think Jan, I think this was all of the questions, huh?
Yes, thank you. And I have the question now to Maury Gillen. I'm just looking at the chat because there was a question. What about the metropolitan areas? Because it was I remember that several associations of urban authorities, they were fighting for having this a very specific element of functional areas, but which requires an important place in regulation, and we don't see it now. It disappeared. What about the approach of the Commission to metropolitan areas? This is one one of the elements. And I would like to add two other questions to Moray-Egeland. One is very technical, but you proposed at the beginning the urban initiative 500 million. Next, you finish with 400. So because Olbrycht was moved to inter-regional cooperation, Olbrycht left with 100 million. I mean, is it added to the inter-regional or territorial cooperation or not? I mean, or it disappeared. So this is one technical question. And what about the urban agenda? The urban agenda, of course, we can read it between the lines that money should be given to this kind of elements. But okay, what about the urban agenda? Because this is, I think, it was a flagship also of the Commission, but it requires some money for the Secretariat of the others. And I think all of us, we know that the partnerships are something which can be really very useful. So what about the urban agenda? So I would like to give now the floor to Moray-Egeland to first about 100 million and next about the urban agenda. What about it?
Yes, thank you, Jan. If I could maybe just start by adding just one or two words to what Constanza said, because I think that was an extremely good description of how we take forward and build up new CLLDs. I was just asking in parallel to some colleagues to see where we are on the CLLD situation. I think Constanza said in her first introduction that I had the impression she was perhaps a little frustrated that the CLLD approach in Germany hadn't expanded as much as maybe you would have liked to have seen. The interesting thing, in 1420, we have something like, I think, more than 300 examples of urban-based community-led local development that have started in this period. Now, there's still lots of opportunity for more, but I think that level of interest from something which wasn't used before, because 1420 was the first time we've seen the CLLD approach used in an urban dimension, is extremely encouraging. And I think there are just two elements that I would just say there, that my colleagues in the DG, we have a specific unit handling inclusive growth and urban and territorial development. And one of their tasks is very much to follow what's happening on CLLD ITI issues, to encourage exchanges of good practice, exchanges of ideas, and that's one of the things that they're working on. And I saw in the comments box as well, Annalisa was underlining that, of course, Eurocities as well has a lot of experience about what's being done and what, if you like, some of the innovators in this area. And in all honesty, you know, that's by far the best answer that I can give about how we introduce this into new areas, is to get people talking to each other and get people who are using this example, who have started doing it, to explain what they've done, how they've done it, what worked, what didn't work. And we've also seen that, I think, in the ITIs that I mentioned, some of the very good examples now that we're seeing in Poland precisely, which were quite difficult to start up because it was such a new tool and nobody had used it before. And I think it's precisely the kind of thing where, by talking to the relevant authorities in Poland about what they learned and what they struggled with, it's the kind of thing that new areas can avoid those similar mistakes. So it's very much, I think, about talking to each other and sharing those experiences. I see Kasia was saying that they were planning, you're planning some sort of more detailed event on that. I think my colleagues, particularly in the urban and territorial development unit, would be delighted to take part and provide their input. On the metropolitan areas question, well, I think you perhaps don't see the wording itself explicitly in the regulations, but I don't think that can be characterized as a deliberate exclusion. I think, as with all these negotiations, it was important to arrive at the most appropriate form of words that encompasses as broad a spread as possible. So I think urban areas really should be understood in the necessary widest sense, be that metropolitan areas, be it what used to be called quartiers en crise, you know, the smaller districts, etc. So it should be seen covering that whole dimension. I think what we did underline in the text, and again, if I can say that a particular priority for the Parliament and a successful point in the negotiations was the high degree of visibility provided for the functional urban areas. The underlining of that particular priority in that functional context about, again, because functional urban areas by their nature are underlining that integrated approach, how you link together the urban and the close rural areas, the peri-urban dimension, and how you bring everyone together as part of the same package. So I wouldn't overinterpret the fact that the adjective metropolitan isn't visible. I think there's plenty of opportunities there for metropolitan areas to take this forward as well. On the financial side, I think the safest way to present it is essentially that this is a repackaging. Yes, there is 100 million less than the Commission proposed, but Olbrycht has 75 million from the Interreg regulation, and indeed 100 million was moved from the Urban Initiative over to Olbrycht. So it doesn't quite add back up to the 500. But there is still significant technical assistance available, also Commission technical assistance on top, and even the 475, which is 2018 prices, of course. I haven't done the calculation, so it might reach 500 million once you convert it with inflation to current prices. But it's still more than we have available at the moment if you aggregate everything together. At the moment, I think it comes to around 400, 450 perhaps maximum. So it is still overall an increase, and it's certainly not the case that there's been 100 taken away and nothing provided. As I say, there is the 75 on the Olbrycht side, which, because it is an Interreg program, member states have to co-finance. So that's an important point as well. There is national co-financing required under Olbrycht, which won't be required necessarily under the Urban Initiative because it will be directly managed. The final point, I think, is very interesting that you mentioned on the urban agenda. This clearly remains a priority for the Commission to continue providing support, and indeed our colleagues in the Urban and Territorial Unit have been doing a very large amount of work providing secretarial functions to the various groups working on the urban agenda. Interestingly, from a regulation point of view, the urban agenda was slightly sensitive for member states. I think that stemmed from the fact that it is an intergovernmental approach. And I think member states once or twice were slightly concerned that by having it too visibly mentioned, you were folding that intergovernmental dimension under cohesion policy and therefore under more, I was going to say direct control, but under more direct involvement, should I say, from the Commission side of things. So perhaps there was just that little degree of sensitivity there on the member state side, which means that it's not as visible as you might have wanted. What I can say is that in the Urban Initiative, the European Urban Initiative article, there is again explicit support mentioned there for the urban agenda, and again I have to thank the Parliament for insisting here. We have wording which says the European Urban Initiative shall support the European agenda for the EU, including support for the participation of local authorities in the thematic partnerships. And that was directly as a result of the Parliament's negotiating position. Because before that, it was a much more general wording that the Council was trying to retain. So It's not very long, if you like, the actual reference, but I think it provides everything that is necessary to make sure that that urban dimension and the urban agenda are fully supported and fully integrated with what we're trying to achieve under the cohesion policy framework. Thank you.
There is a very interesting exchange of information on the chat. So please, if you can, I would like to invite you to read the chat, because I don't want to read all the messages which are presented, because some of them are just information for all of us. Some of them are questions, like, for example, from Cristina Gutierrez Cortines about the situation of special kind of cities. But I think it should be rather to be discussed with the Association of Cities, how to organize this kind of, because from the political level, it's not possible to organize any from upside down. So I think that, but just my very short comments to what Warwick Gillen said. First, you save a little bit money. I mean, when you put the Olbrycht from one side to another, you save something. I mean, you reduced 100 and you didn't put the whole 100 to the other part. So you saved on the way a little bit. So this is a quite normal practice in the Commission. So, and the second element, sorry, this is the official meeting or any institution. This is our intergroup. So I must say that I am very grateful that you confirmed that the ownership of the urban agenda is not clear. This is what we were fighting for. I mean, the urban agenda was, in fact, the initiative of the Dutch presidency, and we remember it. And I think that it was Lambert who was someone who even found the name of the Amsterdam. How was it? The Anna Luisa. Amsterdam Pact. I'm reading from your mouth. Okay, Amsterdam Pact. Lambert just found it, and this was the beginning. And next, it was intergovernmental, signed by the member states. And next, we fought and we hoped that the Commission will take it as European, as some kind of action. But I see that this is a kind of reluctance. And still intergovernmental. So if it's governmental, is it really European or not? Should we pay for this secretariat? The question is not about the title. The question is about what about the follow-up of the action plans of the partnerships. Okay. Because if they work very hard and they prepare something, it should be the kind of link to the European policy.
Yeah. If it's purely, Jan, can yes. You hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, could I ask also, because I'm not completely informed, the urban agenda and the operational programs. I could have a look now to several draft partnership agreements, and I'm some way missing it, the text there on urban in general. But second is there an operational program? Because now everyone after the partnership agreement dives to make operational programs. And this is on the policy objectives, of course, clear European goals. But is there an urban operational program foreseen in the CPR? This is a key point.
Lambert, maybe I can take the floor. As you know, there is never planned a special operational program for something, but and this is the new issue for the next period. The regions, the CPR is very flexible. If you have an idea and the partnership principle on the region, in German, the Länder, for example, they agree to have this. You can do this. It's a problem that you have to solve. You can't solve this on European level. You have to solve this on regional level. This is the challenge. It might be not very easy, But you can't say you have to have an operational urban operational program in every member state. That is the decision of the member states. But it is possible. Yes, but then you have a centralized issue, a centralized program. I think it really must be solved on the regional level and not on the European level. You have the possibility to do so. The Commission should take care that or pay attention that it is included in the partnership agreement, that they accept that the regions can do on urban development something, that they have to do something on urban development, but there's nothing about obligation for an operational program for cities or urban developed areas.
Yeah, I must add that, for example, in Poland, there was an idea to create a special operational program for the middle-sized cities, but it was strongly opposed by the regions. That to have a special operation program for the cities. So that's why we have only central programs on the national level, and next we have the regional operation programs. And the urban dimension is what the Constance said, is present in the regional operation programs. This is included in the regional programs. But the question is also about the ITIs and the CLLR, where they are. They are mainly, or should be, in the regional. If there is in a concrete member states, the regional programs, they are included in regional programs. So this is it. And now I must apologize officially the European Commission, because I was absolutely unjust saying that this is the Commission who saved money for urban. And I have just the information on the chat from Ray that it was European Parliament and the Council who wanted to shift the Olbrycht from one part to another part. The real question is, okay, who saved money? I mean, through this shift from one side to another. But anyway, I do apologize. It's not business as usual. It was just now Parliament and the Council. So I don't know if anybody can comment on this. Anybody wants to take the floor? I just would look at the chat and the. Oh yes, we have some information about the urban agenda. That the urban agenda is a joint multi-level initiative developing intergovernmental cooperation steered by the government cooperation according to Riga Declaration, Pact of Amsterdam, and you like each other. Absolutely true. The question is, it has been created like this. The question is how it should be in future. How it should be. Should it be the ownership of the Commission, or it should be intergovernmental? Because if it's even governmental, it's different. Marcos Ross-Semper is asking for the floor. Yes, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Jan, for giving me the floor. I just wanted to make some general comments, not specific comments on regional funds. And I wanted to start about urban areas, how to increase the participation of, for example, urban areas, cities, majors on regional funds, because we are very used to administrate regional funds by member state authorities, regional authorities, but I think we should try to improve and increase the governance of cities on all these projects, especially on this new period, new term that we are going to have a lot of new challenges of urban areas because of the pandemic and other things. The second point is on the debate now is about the urban agenda. I think we should try to put urban agenda on the center on regional funds, especially on cities and urban areas, because nowadays urban agenda is adopted. We have revisited the new Leipzig charts, but no member states and there is no link, no effective link between urban agenda and regional funds, cohesion funds, And I think we should try to find a mechanism to link and to condition these kind of funds, to analyze whose cities are achieving the objectives of urban agenda, and then give them funds to develop their projects, but conditioned to having a proper and adopted urban agenda. On the other point, we have the reality that many member states, they are adopting their own urban agenda. For example, in my country, we have Spanish urban agenda. It's very related to European urban agenda, of course, but we have United Nations urban agenda, new urban agenda, European urban agenda, Spanish urban agenda, and we had. It should be a good idea to try to harmonize all our urban agendas and try to link with regional funds and try to conditionate regional funds to the achieving of the objectives of each city urban agenda. There is other point, and I am just finishing. We should try to link also not only to the urban agenda, but also to sustainable cities and Green Deal, because we are all the time talking about sustainability, Green Deal, but we should try to arrive to a good system of indicators that any city, any town, big town or little city, medium city or big city, or in or even more regional metropolitan areas, functional areas, could use and try to define if they are which qualification they have on sustainability. Is very difficult to try to harmonize this, but we should try to think on this on the parliament, and try to for example, try to propose an INI report or something similar in order to try to harmonize indicators of sustainability, and then later on conditionate regional funds to the increasing or improving of these indicators in each city. And also on the terms of governance and mayors and cities, I think it should be a good idea to try to prepare a joint hearing between Committee of Regions, Eurocities, and 2, 3 or 4 committees involved as REGI, but ENVI, why not, or CULT, why not, because of the new European Bauhaus, on these terms, governance, and how majors, how cities can improve their governance of regional city. That's are my comments. I can enter later if it is possible. Okay. We are not listening, Jan. You are on.
Before asking the to give the answer, I would like to also to read the question, which is why we are not talking about and implementing sustainable impact assessment. This is the question who is asking. So we have 2 questions now to Murray Gillen. First, what is the relation between the urban agenda and the regulations? I mean, cohesion policy regulation. What is the relation for you as the Commission? And what about the implementing sustainability? Because the first question about the relation is okay, because the people who are multi-level governance, what we were discussing very often in the partnership, they expect that what they are discussing will be translated and into the practice, into the cohesion policy regulation, etc. So what about the link between urban agenda and cohesion policy for 21-27? And what about the implement sustainable impact assessment? Please, Maury, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you again. On the link, I think that this is something that underlines the importance of the partnership dimension, essentially, because it's those that are involved in the ongoing work on the thematic partnerships, on the outcomes that are coming out of the thematic partnerships, who need to be looking at the content there and how that gets translated into the programs for the individual member states and the individual regions. We can, and I think this was Constanza's point just now, we can only do so much from a regulatory perspective. I mean, if I come back to Lambert's example of the possibility of a dedicated urban program, just to look at that, you could theoretically establish that as an obligation at the regulation level. But then you're going to have a lot of difficult discussions with the likes of Luxembourg, with the likes of Cyprus, with the and other smaller member states about, well, why should we have a standalone urban program? Because we're trying to look at an integrated approach to regional policy for our whole country. So what the regulations try and do is establish, as I said, that umbrella, that framework, which allows countries to operate as they see fit. Annalisa is underlining that we have a metropolitan approach from the Italian structure. They see that as an added value, they build that into their structure. And as Constanza underlined, the regulation permits that, it allows that flexibility. What I would say as part of my answer there is that this is one of the reasons why we are making so much noise about the integrated territorial development, the approach of CLLD, the approach of ITIs, because it allows precisely the equivalent of a program-based approach without the formality of creating many multiple programs. It allows you to set up and operate that system inside the existing programs. And as you saw on the slides I showed earlier, you need a selection process that covers the local partnership. You need the active involvement of the local partnership in the process. So it provides that framework to operate inside the existing structures without the need to multiply. We already have, I think, over 500 cohesion policy programs across Europe, which is already a lot. It's a lot, I can tell you, when you have to run them. From the Commission side, it's a lot for member states to operate them as well. So it's about providing the various possibilities about how that can function. And there too, I think, in the context of CLLD, in the context of ITI, if lessons can be identified and learned from the thematic partnerships under the urban agenda, they should be fed in to the delivery of those CLLDs or those ITIs. I don't think it's something that the Commission would be looking to try and impose top down. Again, it would run counter to what we're trying to achieve with CLLD and ITIs. But it's certainly the type of question that I expect my colleagues in the programme negotiations to be asking. Is, you know, how much have you taken account of the urban agenda? How much have you factored this in to the overall process? That's how I would see that process operating. Then I just wanted to pick up a couple of additional points because I saw, in addition to I've now lost it in the chat, I'm afraid, sorry. On the question of the sustainable impact assessment, I must admit, it's not my area of expertise, so I'm not sure I could give a comprehensive answer there. I don't know if anybody could help me on that one in the meeting. What I did want to just pick up on were the comments in relation to the accessibility for all and the rights of persons with disabilities, because there's a comment there that is insufficiently mentioned in the urban dimension in the regulations. Actually, this was another area where the Parliament was extremely active in the negotiations on the regulations. It's not directly mentioned in the regulations in relation to the urban elements that I've talked about this morning, because it's actually one of the fundamental enabling conditions included covering the entire regulation. So the implementation and application of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is built in at the enabling condition level. And that means that unless programs comply with the criteria that have been included about delivering this, monitoring that everything is in line with the convention, and that the monitoring committees of the programs have received regular reports that everything being done in the programs is compliant with that, then the money stops. Because this is at enabling condition level. So it's really a very much a horizontal approach on that UN convention. So I hope that answers that question. As I say, on the sustainability one, I have less knowledge, I'm afraid. It's something that, if necessary, I can go back and talk to colleagues on and come back to you in writing as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would like to thank you. And now the last question, because we are going to the conclusions. And the last question is Annalisa Boni, the Eurocities. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, it's not really a question, it's more some comments, but still, because okay, on the urban agenda, let's not open the Pandora box. We could speak for hours about the follow-up on the pact and the Leipzig Charter. The urban impact assessments has fantastic tools to, you know, urban-proof policy and legislation. But anyway, I see two sides of it, of the urban agenda. There's one that is really part of the cohesion policy package and all that goes with it, that Maury has very well described. The other thing is more like a partnership. What Tillmans wrote in the chat is really a governance element, and how, like, the recommendations from the partnerships, as you said, Jan, could actually feed into changing the legislation that is happening in the, you know, in the Parliament and in the Council and in the Commission. So it's really how that can be done. But okay, that's a huge, it's a huge discussion. We don't have the time here. But on cohesion, it's true that our biggest battle is behind us. We shouldn't forget that we were still trying to have a high, you know, urban earmark, and we had it, and also cohesion policy completely. So that's good. But still, some of I would like to share with you some of the concerns from our cities, because the devil is in the details. Huh? So it's in the implementation, it's in this phase. And so, for instance, generally, we can see a sort of struggle both on the timing and also the different funds that they are having to organize and so on. So like with the RRF and the cohesion and then REACT-EU, it's quite difficult to, the things that are coming up from them, it's that it's still difficult to deal with the REACT-EU and make sure that there is a strong coherence and synergies between the RRF and cohesion. That's not easy. We've worked, Lambert knows it very well, all that synergy only between cohesion and H2020, imagine now with RRF on top. So it's really a big concern of the local authorities. On the urban-rural, we are a bit concerned that it seems that in some countries, ITIs will be used less, it seems like. And so, you know, for us, it's really important that structural funds can be used at the functional areas level, as we said before, because you cannot face the challenges of urban areas without considering the rural areas. And, you know, what somebody was saying in the chat, just to remind that a recent survey of the OECD shows that the majority of people living in the rural area are actually part of the metropolitan areas, not, you know, only a minority is part of a remote rural area. So it's really, really, the metropolitan and the functional dimension is really a fundamental point. And also this idea of the technical support instruments that exist to build, you know, the so much needed administrative capacity and to support reforms in public administration, for instance, at the local level. This is very important for you as MEPs to know and to keep in mind, because it's important that member states have to be strategic. Commissioner Ferreira said this as well. The member states have to be strategic about this, because, you know, it can be a really, really game changers to help the information and the way in which cohesion policy is then implemented. And of course, last but not least, cities remain very worried on the partnership principle, because anyway, we know, you know it by heart, you know it better than us. It still remains a sort of unsatisfying element in many member states. And allow me to make a connection here with what's happening also on the recovery and resilience plans, national plans. Thanks to the Parliament, of course, the regulation is now saying clearly that local authorities have to be involved in the plans, and very happy that the European Commission is working on guidelines to make sure that this will happen in a meaningful way, because that's the difficult point. So our president, the mayor of Florence, has addressed many of you a letter to share the results of a survey that we carried out with over 50 big cities. That shows that the evidence is not very reassuring. Most cities so far did not have an impact on the draft national recovery plan. And that's very worrying, yeah, because it's really like the cities and metropolitan areas are key for recovery. That's, these are where the crisis has hit most, and that's where the building back in a sustainable, fair, digital, and so on can actually happen. So it's really important to have cities and metropolitan areas around the table when developing the plans, but okay, we're nearly there, so it's a bit late, but also to make sure that in the implementation, things are done in that way. So we would be very, very happy to continue the discussion with you. And I'm super grateful that so many members of the Regi Committee are here as well. It's the first time that the Urban Intergroup and the Regi Committee have so many members around the table on urban. So it's really, really important to continue this dialogue. And, how can we make sure that this dialogue with cities and the member states on recovery can be meaningful through also your support and your voice, as mentioned also by Marcos earlier on. So we remain at your support, at your disposal to support you in any action you may think of in this direction. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Annalisa. This is not the question, so I don't want to open the question. So now we have the time for the conclusions of our meeting. And first, I would like to give the floor to the president, the chair of the Regi Committee, and I would like to welcome very warmly and thank you. You are with us. After the presentation of Annalisa, it seems that we have a lot of work to be done. President, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Jan. First, dear Jan, dear colleagues, dear member of Eurocity, good morning to everybody. I'm really sorry for my terrible French accent. Generally, I'm speaking in French, so I have a French and Creole accent. It's terrible for you, but I will try. First, Jan, I want to tell you thank you for this meeting, and I want to tell you and all colleagues of Intergroup how is important the work with Regi Committee, between Regi Committee and your Intergroup. And you can count on our Regi Committee. This debate is remarkably interesting, and I take from the ideas you expressed today and from the recent letter as Annalisa say of Eurocity and his president, the mayor of Florence, that there is a need during this time of crisis of direct exchange between elected representatives of cities and the European Parliament. This week, at the initiative of Regi Committee, we have initiated a first hearing with President of Regional Executive. This has been, I think, an extremely interesting and fruitful meeting. We will organize another hearing on 16 March. And I propose to my colleague coordinators, Constance is here, that our next meeting, we mention the possibility of inviting on our committee president of Metropolitan Executive, as well as mayors of large, but also smaller cities. I want to speak about RRF, and Annalisa speak about this. It's a crucial point. The Regi Committee has not been associated for the RRF, but we have the same level as regions and cities, often rung the alarm on the current process of the renationalizations of European policies and the recovery plan in particular. And indeed, within the recovery plans, we see that regions and cities have not been associated, as you are often pointing out. All will cause problems in terms of cohesion. How to achieve that the recovery will happen in priority in territories and cities which need it the most? There is a real risk that existing territorial and social divide will depend. The few years ahead of us will redraw the map of Europe and on the world. Territories and countries which will not handle their recovery will accumulate delays that will penalize them greatly. This is, I think, what our Regi Committee should pay special attention to. Indeed, the RRF is based on Article 175 on the treaty, which enables a new fund to be created to reach the cohesion objective. State in Article 174 when the EADF and ESF are insufficient to achieve it. On this point, I called upon Moray Gilland from DG Regio, and with him all DG Regio, to be attentive on these questions. We can't lose the very objective of cohesion policy from sight. This is not a simple investment policy. It is a policy with an objective. No city, no citizen, no regions will be left behind. And that the very long-term objective of cohesion, its essence, is nothing other than share and equal prosperity throughout all European Union. We are still far from that, as the prosperity gap between East and West, between South and North, is still present. But our policies help to narrow these disparities, and the Commission must ensure that in respect with the treaty, the recovery contributes to cohesion. You can count on our Regi Committee to pay special attention to this. The years ahead of us are precious, and I encourage cities and regions to make your voice heard, to be the actor of this recovery and the guarantors of the principle governing cohesion policy. Facing the risk of poverty during the crisis in every city in Europe, and in particular the biggest one, we have to call all member states to set up with cities a large program to help families and disadvantaged people, but also the middle class whose wealth and income have dropped, while the price of rent, energy, and transport continue to increase. We are, in this regard, ready to be fully outside of city. The COVID crisis has caused in many cities the widest family to flee towards place of life with lower population density. The pandemic, combined with the ecological crisis, has created a space for deep reflection for all of us metropolitan people. And there is a new trend towards the metropolitan exodus. And Christoph Hetman speak about this in his speech. The COVID crisis has revealed the weakness of large cities that have been very attractive so far. I also believe that citizens everywhere in Europe aspire to a better quality of life, cleaner air, more space, more time, more greenery, more nature, more measure in their life, and that for the city of tomorrow, the metropolitan model is no longer a dream to be achieved. We have to invent a new model for city with these new aspirations. Thank you again, dear Jan, for this day's work. And as Regi Committee Chairman, I want to tell you again, and all members of the intergroup, our work together is important. You have heard our rapporteurs, Constance Krell, Andrei Novakov, and Christoph Hetman, and you see how in all negotiation the requests made, and I believe that the urban dimension is now consolidated in our new regulation. But we have to be very attentive now for the relance and for the cohesion, the respect of the principle of cohesion in the relance. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you very much, Janos. And we hope to cooperate. By the way, please note that from time to time it's good to have the intergroup for the Regi Committee, because we have more time to concentrate on one subject, and we have a real participation of the different actors on the field on the urban. So I think this complementarity with the Regi can be very useful for both of us. And the final conclusion from our Vice President of the Urban Intergroup, Andreas Schiller, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And as you, Jan, already mentioned, I think the extremely good thing of the Urban Intergroup is to have all the stakeholders, all the actors in the field also on the table. But I want to thank also all those which participated, and especially you, Jan, also for taking the burden of organizing this event today, because it was extremely interesting, extremely rich of details, which are important. And I think, not to be too long, because anyway, we are some minutes overdue, we should not forget it is a success of urban policy in the European Union that we have achieved what we have achieved now, which is also that there is a lot of support for urban areas, but you have to be a little detective to find them also, because they are spread over a lot of programs. But if we speak about the future challenges of the European Union, smarter Europe, smarter cities, greener, low carbon, more connected, more social, stable, then it is obvious that urban areas play a key role to fulfill and to reach these goals. So I want to underline what was also said several times in the discussion, is that the implementation is key. And I think it is extremely important to continue making clear that, for example, the European Recovery Plan needs not only consultation of the urban level of our state. It means to integrate in developing these programs, because it is the urban areas which bring it on the ground, which make the effect. And it's not just sending a letter, offering an email address to say, please give your consultation. It is integrating. This is how we understand urban policies. And it would be a pity if these 750 billion euros are not used as good as possible. And this means that we need a stronger integration also of the urban area. So having said this and spoken long today about the cohesion policy, I think there is a lot done, a lot achieved, but even more to do.
Yes, thank you, Andreas. And I would like to welcome everybody to take part in this meeting. Thank you for everybody who wrote the remarks and information on the chat. I think it's really important. We will stay in contact. We will use it. Thank you, President of the REGI Committee, to inform about the reaction of the REGI to the RRF implementation, because this is one of the urgent elements, and we will cooperate with this. And at the end, I would just to inform you that our next meeting of the intergroup will be on 26th of March. 26th of March, it will be organized with the DG GROW about the Intelligent Cities Challenge. Intelligent Cities Challenge is the initiative of DG GROW, European Commission, is to help 136 cities, smaller cities, leverage cutting-edge technologies to lead a green, smart, etc. I think that it will be interesting. 26th of March, and before this, we will take part in the REGI committee and discussing RRF. Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much, and I hope that we will meet in 1 month on this way. Hopefully, very soon on the physical. But I don't know if we can manage the number of participants if it's physical. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Bye.